Hello. I thought I'd deal with a few of the comments which have been made today. David Jones, um, he says, "Why does peerage matter?" Well, peerage doesn't matter in itself. Peerage is about people who are equal and above us, and therefore, in principle, they're people who command respect. I don't see that somebody who is so um, squalid should command respect. And Nadine Dorries is certainly not alone among some very questionable appointments that have been made into the House of Lords over the last 100 odd years. Some very questionable appointments. And that alone gives us a good reason to think, should we reform the House of Lords? My own instinct is actually the House of Lords does a very good job, and I'll explain why. When you've got to contact a member of Parliament, you have two choices. You can contact your MP, in which case that is the only person you can actually directly contact. Nobody else. You can write to the Prime Minister, I suppose, and that might work in some way. It worked for me, actually. When I didn't get a reply from Nadine Dorries, I wrote to Boris. And then miraculously, somebody from the Ministry of DCMS finally wrote a bland and sort of shove-off letter. But they actually wrote back. It took 6 months before I wrote to Boris. But there is another route. And that other route I found extremely efficacious years and years ago when I was dealing with torture and I wanted some help. And I wrote to as many people as I could find in the House of Lords, and they wrote back. And that was extraordinarily helpful. Extraordinarily helpful. The House of Lords is not constrained by the same idea that you can only contact the person who directly represents you. We don't have the European Parliament anymore. That would have given us another person that we could directly contact. So the House of Lords, if we were to elect the House of Lords, that would again limit the number of people in the House of Lords we could contact. So if the House of Lords were to be reformed, I think it should be reformed with that understanding that constituents can write to anybody and that anybody should then respond. And it doesn't matter whether somebody can solve the problem. We've got a ridiculous idea in the country at the moment that when we write to somebody, that person is expected personally to solve the problem. Most of the time they can't. Most of the time the problem is there and sort of swirling around the bottom of the bottle until somebody has the brilliance to deal with it and decant it and put it somewhere else. And it's the number of letters that we write, it's the persistence which is important, not the assumption that we can solve that problem there and then. We can't. And we're very arrogant if we think who are writing those letters, or if MPs who are answering those letters think that they can solve that problem there and then. It takes time. In the case of my partner's torture, it took 11 years. In the case of reforming reality TV, in my case, it's taken 3 years so far. It's not a long time. In the larger scale of things, it's not a long time. And, I think it's an important thing to focus on. Thomas King says, Tim, great video as always. I know this is off topic, but good luck with the pantomime script. It's a good reason why I'm a bit slow today, because I've managed to get through to the end of Act 1. And I'm sort of starting on Act 2, but it's tough because pantomime scripts always change. That's their nature. They're written for the people involved, and providing the person who's writing the part knows who he's writing for, who she's writing for, then you end up with something which is tailor-made and should be interesting. I hope that's the case. Who knows? So for example, if you were to go to the London Palladium, you see Julian Clary. It is Julian Clary. Of course, in his case, he writes his own material. But you take these people, and it goes all the way back to the days of the music hall. The music hall people got on stage with these very, very thin stories, and they improvised their own show around those thin stories, and they did their own songs, and the productions got as far away from the harlequinade, the comédie dell'arte, and the tradition of authentic pantomime as it is possible to get, to the point where what we call pantomime in Britain is nothing to do with pantomime. There's none of this sort of music without, there's none of this mime stuff going on in British pantomime. As we know, it's all about talking directly to the audience, breaking the fourth wall, very Brechtian. And I think it's a wonderful part of British theatrical and cultural history, and it would be a great shame if we ever lost it. Of course, in the past, it wasn't something which was restricted to Christmas. It went on for a long time, and I'm so pleased that Ian McKellen is picking that idea up and doing his production of Mother Goose over some months, well into the new year. So I'm looking forward eventually to seeing that. I imagine he will be as filthy as Mother Goose as he was as Widow Twankey. But there we are. So we've gone... what else have we got? David Jones again says, it kind of really wouldn't suck if Tim Wilson gave like a demonstration of that. Well, I'm not doing that. You're going to have to come. You're going to have to come. If you want to see a demonstration of the pantomime, you're going to have to come and see it. I can't promise what it's going to be like. I have no idea. But I'm not doing it here. Egiro. I'm talking about people being on thin ice, and I'm talking about the contrast between the arrest of a BBC reporter and the arrest of reporters on the bridge monitoring and filming the M25 action, which I must say I don't approve of. But, you know, a reporter's job is to report what is going on, not what should be going on. He says here, what is it? You hit the nail right on the thumb. Thank you. Also, isn't there legislation in train to allow the police to stop almost any protest in the UK? China has had far fewer deaths per capita than almost any other country by a long stretch. Seems like China cares far more for its citizens' lives than everyone else. Well, who knows? Jan Anders, David Davis, of all people, thinks he has something to say about honour and integrity, as